Hello, everyone. I'm Samrat Chaudhary. I'm the director of Association of Vapers India, and we are championing the fight for access to safer alternatives for millions of Indians. Today, I would welcome you to our edition of Speaking to Experts in the Field of Tobacco Harm Reduction, where we speak to people who have deep insight into safer alternatives and how they can work in the Indian and the international context. Today, please welcome me in joining Nihar Dholakia, who is an expert in this field, especially in the field of safer smokeless tobacco and nicotine products. He's also the director of Dholakia Tobacco, which has been making smokeless tobacco products for a few generations. So, welcome, Nihar. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
First off, can you tell us what is SNUS and how is it safer and different from Indian and Asian smokeless tobacco products, especially Kheni, which is the most used tobacco product in India, used by about 200 million people, and which causes 315,000 deaths a year. And what do you think, or what kind of scientific evidence is available which supports the safety of snus over other Indian and Asian smokeless tobacco products?
SNUS is a moist oral tobacco portion, which has significant low amounts of TSNAs. So TSNAs are a group of nitrosamines which are present in tobacco and tobacco smoke, which are carcinogens. So the entire one of the reasons why snus is less harmful is because it has lower content of TSNAs. If you look at the research and data, the product originated in Sweden, and Sweden right now has the lowest tobacco mortality rate, and it has the lowest smoking population in the entire world. So, the data and science and research suggests that it has significant harm reduction benefit over any form of smokeless tobacco present. If you look at it in the Indian context, we have a wide portfolio of smokeless tobacco products. We have about 300 million tobacco consumers, but out of that, 200 million are smokeless tobacco consumers. But there's there's no quality control as such in making smokeless tobacco products in India. So there's no control of TSNAs, there's no control of the additives, and that's why the Indian smokeless is much more harmful than compared to a fruit. You know, if you talk about the entire process of how snus is made, the first step is selection of the right tobacco. We need to select tobaccos which have low TSNA contents. The TSNAs are part of tobacco. So the first step is selecting tobaccos which has low TSNAs in them. And the next step is pasteurization. Just how you would pasteurize your milk, for example, to kill the bacteria in it. We pasteurize the tobacco. So the entire process is about 24-hour long process. So this is one of the reasons why snus is less harmful. It's risk reduced in comparison to the Indian smokeless products that we have in India. And there has been a long-term study. If you talk about US, for example, US has made snus as a model, has claimed that snus can now be a modified risk tobacco product, which is significant. A US FDA, which is the most strict FDA on this planet, and there's a lot of science and data that has been evaluated by them to call it a modified risk tobacco product.
Why do you think snus can be an effective substitute for Indian and Asian smokeless tobacco users? What is it that would make it effective for let's say a Kheni user to switch, and also whether snus can be an effective harm reduction substitute for smokers in the country?
Well, if you look at the consumption in India, out of those 200 million smokeless tobacco users, we have about 150 million using Henny or Gutka or Mishri. And the entire action is putting something under your lip. And snooze is exactly the same. You have to put this product under your lip or behind your lip. And that's one of the reasons why I believe in this product, that it can play a significant part in risk reduction for the Indian tobacco users, because there's no change of action. It's just a simple switch. And it's a replacement. Does it work for smokers? Yes, it does work for smokers as well. But smokers, they need a completely different action. The whole habit is different. So you have to attempt to give it a try, to switch. It's not like it's a different form of action altogether. But for smokeless is why I believe in India, because the burden that we have in India is not cigarettes, of course, but the larger burden that we have is of smokeless tobacco. And anything that you put under your lip and just switching it with snus, it's convenient for the consumers as well.
What do you think are the challenges, development, product development wise and scientifically, that need to be overcome to make snus work for the Indian and Asian smokeless tobacco users? To give you an example of what I mean, is it possible to make snus in a way that, let's say, users can roll it in their hand, because that hand to mouth action, this rolling action is comparable to the hand to mouth action, which is a part of the behavioral aspect of using that product. So, is there a way that we can look at it, or there are other challenges that you think that need to be overcome?
Well, I think in terms of product development, the drawback that I see in India is that we don't have too many tobaccos which has low TSNA contents, and that's one of the biggest challenge that we have in India. Uh, Making a product which suits the taste profiles of the Indian consumers, that is easy. That is not a big problem. Replacing the action of rubbing something on their hand and putting it, that is something that we need to change, and the consumers need to adapt to something more sophisticated. We're just eliminating the entire process of rolling something on your hand. So that will go away, and that is going away, and that there's a cycle of each product, and we are noticing that the rubbing on the hands is slowly disappearing now, and more people are moving towards more sophisticated use of smokeless tobacco, and pouch presents an opportunity for harm reduction, also a little more sophisticated way of consuming tobacco.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I can, even with vaping, when you make a transition, there is a change of behavior as a person starts using the product. I mean, of course, flavors is a big thing. With tobacco, with smoking, you just have that one particular kind of flavor. So initially, people do when they make a switch, they switch with nicotine flavor or tobacco flavored liquids, but then they gradually expand the flavor profile and then try different kinds. So I think it's important that once that nicotine dependence is addressed, and once people make the switch, then they can expand from there. What exactly are nicotine pouches? Everyone is hearing about them, but tell us what exactly they are. What is the risk profile, and the risk profile compared to smoking? Compared to Indian smokeless tobacco products, and also compared to vaping. And what do you think, or who do you think is the most suited category of tobacco or nicotine users for whom they can be an effective substitution product?
So nicotine pouch are very similar to a snus, but without tobacco, but with nicotine. We often call it. It's also known as tobacco-free snus. In comparison to the risk profile, it is very similar to that of a NRT. And if we talk about NRT, is nicotine patches and nicotine gums. So it's 99% safer than any tobacco product out there on the market at the moment. There's no combustion. So the main killer is the combustion. So cigarettes, if we compare nicotine pouch to a cigarette, we don't have combustion there, and just the easiest intake of nicotine and the safest way that one can consume nicotine. So risk profile is very well compared to that of a nicotine gum. And yes, it is very widely used in the West by smokers, not just by smokeless tobacco users.
Can you show us these two, snus and nicotine pouch, so we can, our viewers can see what they are and what is the difference between them? And can you tell us who are the, for whom which product could work?
Right. So this is a nicotine pouch, which is completely white in color. It doesn't have any tobacco in it. And the filler that we have is plant fiber. So nicotine is attached with the plant fiber to deliver flavor. And this is a snus product. So it has tobacco in it. You can see it's way identical. It's just the color difference that it has. So for smokers, I think nicotine pouch is very much suitable. And for any smokeless tobacco users, a snus risk-reduced oral pouch would be much more suitable.
So is snus readily available in the country? I mean, can people find it?
Not really, to be honest, because most of the Indian guys who call it snooze, it's not technically snooze. It's a filter Kenny. So you cannot differentiate between a filter Kenny and a snooze. So it has to come from responsible companies, promoting the products and promoting the brands. So they need to be responsible. They need to be offering the right sort of risk profiles to the consumers. But the good thing is that adaptation, people are adapting to the pouches, so which is important thing. So which becomes easier for snooze to be replaced or used by the consumers in India. So sophistication is coming. Everybody wants to be more sophisticated in terms of use. So we are seeing that at the moment, and there's a lot of pouches that are being sold in India at the moment. But not every pouch is a snooze product.
So yes, some people are marketing filter Kenny as snus, which is not. I mean, what is the difference? I mean, how do you? What is the difference between filter Kenny and snus?
So filter candy is made exactly the way a candy is made. There's no pasteurization involved. There's no The tobaccos are not low TSNAs. So that's one of the big differences. Everything comes down to the tobacco. The TSNAs are a part of the tobacco. So you need to select your tobacco very specifically with low TSNAs. And the process of pasteurization is also very important. So if you're not doing both these parts right, you cannot call your product a snooze. You can only call it a filter canny. So this is the harm reduction angle. This is where the quality control and harm reduction is put into a product.
So as you know, India has a wide range of tobacco products. It has a spectrum, and which makes the challenge of developing safer alternatives uh, a big one. So, smokers, in fact, are a smaller component of the overall tobacco use in the country. BDs are the most used product, but they are still pale in comparison to the number of people who use smokeless tobacco products. In smokeless tobacco products, also there is a huge variety, right? Depending on the region you are, there are different kind of products being used, different flavors, different ways of preparing it, different ways of taking it. Uh, and I want to focus on a specific category of users, the ones who use tobacco with betel nut. Now, it's used in many forms. It's part of pan. It's gutka, which is banned in many states, but however, it's still freely available, and people have gotten around the current laws, and you can still find it everywhere. In the Northeast, it's directly consumed with betel nut. So my question is, do you think in the future will it be possible to develop a product? Now, we know snus addresses nicotine dependence, so it could be very well adopted by Kenny users. But what about people who use tobacco with betel nut? Because betel nut also has dependence properties, right? It's also an addictive substance. So, how can products be addressed to that demographic? And what kind of innovation would it take to get there?
Right. So gutka and pan masala are usually chewed, and snus and kenny are usually dip forms of consuming nicotine or delivering nicotine. It's just like it's gonna be difficult for any smoker to consume snus. It's gonna be as difficult as for a gutka or a pan masala user to switch to snus, because we need to replicate the whole chewing aspect, the action of consumption. It is quite possible to have a risk reduced product in that category as well, but it's in the making. It's going to take a bit amount of years to come out, but there is a certain possibility of such product coming out in the next few years for sure.
So, as you know, flavors have become a hot button issue in the West. Uh, with claims that flavors attract kids. Of course, there are a lot of holes in that theory because it's not like flavors don't attract adults, right? One of the reasons why a lot of people are stage switch out of smoking is because it gives them a choice, it gives them a way to address their palate. So it is an enjoyable experience. So that is the reason why they have switched, and perhaps one of the reasons why nicotine gums don't work. Though now they're also launching nicotine gums in flavors, right? So everyone does understand that flavors are important. What I want to ask you is how important are flavors in smokeless tobacco products, in snus products, in nicotine pouch products? Do they have the same kind of importance that they have for vaping products, or is it even more important? I could imagine more because it is something which you directly put in your mouth. But tell us what you think.
I think flavors play a big part in the entire harm reduction. It's very important for anybody who's willing to switch to have flavors. If we talk about India, yes, the Indian palate is much more different than the West. We don't have too many chewing Kenny or dipped tobacco with flavors, but we have a lot of flavors in chewing tobacco, and which is very specific to floral and spice, etc., etc. So yes, I think if we want anybody to switch to a risk-reduced alternative, flavors are going to play a big role, and we need to deliver them products with similar taste profile so that it becomes way easier for them to switch. So in the long run, I think flavors are gonna play a very pivotal role in enabling, helping people to switch to safer alternatives.
Thank you, Nihar. I was in Delhi a few months back and happened to come across someone working in the tobacco control field. Uh, and already, there is, noises coming from that section that snus comes in flavors. Nicotine pouches come in flavors. They will attract kids, and that is their central reason for opposing them. So the harm reduction aspect gets buried in the fact that they could be appealing to kids. How do you address a concern like that?
Responsible marketing and responsible distribution is going to be a big thing in the next 5 to 10 years. With what has happened in the US, we don't want any products or any risk reduced products to go the same way. Uh, so first, the companies who are selling the products needs to be completely responsible. And second, sure, we won't do fruity flavors or flavors which are attracted to the kids, but we can do a lot of other flavors which are not quite attractive for the kids, like traditional smokeless tobacco flavors. So that and mint is something which is very common, and mint is very appreciated by the Indian smokeless tobacco users as well. So I think there is going to be a certain segment of consumers and who are going to opt for such products. But at the end of the day, it comes to responsible marketing and responsible distribution and selling. So that's where the companies themselves have to be very careful, and they have to make it right. They cannot go out and sell to kids.
India, as you know, is a major producer of tobacco. Do you think we have the capability to manufacture and distribute safer nicotine products, be it in smokeless or in vaping, and be a leader in this field in the future? Because we already have that large production. Do you think that production can be transformed or converted? Because right now, the tobacco is being made for the most harmful products. It's being made for it's been grown for tobacco or for smoking, for smokeless tobacco products, which are quite harmful. So, do you think in the future India can lead this transformation, transform and lead this whole movement for transition to lower, safer nicotine products?
Absolutely. I think, India is the second largest grower of tobacco. It is the largest extractor of nicotine in the world. So we have everything that it takes for India to lead in this safer product, making safer alternatives for the world. We could be a global leader, but there has to be a certain knowledge, awareness, recognition of such products, and come from the government. We need support from the government to do so. There has to be support for the farmers. There has to be support for the nicotine extractors. There has to be some sort of regulation put into place for making safer alternatives. There has to be science, research, data that has to be started, because we are at least 10, 15 years back. If you look at Sweden, if you look at US, they are 10, 15 years ahead. And India has everything to be the global leader in this particular segment. We're just not utilizing it. That's what I think. We have the tobaccos. Most of the tobaccos that are used by Swedish companies are exported. Most of the nicotine that is used in vapes or in nicotine pouches is exported from India. So we have everything, but we're not utilizing it. Not even for our home market. So we are very well placed to be a global leader in safer alternatives for the world.
To dig a little deeper into that, Nihar, so what kind of, let's imagine that you had policy control, or you had a way you could shape how this thing pans out. What are the few steps, or what are the few initial steps that you would take uh, on this journey to transformation, which will also give us an insight into what is needed for this transformation to take place?
Well, I won't talk from the base, but I can tell you there's no such regulatory authority governing what is put in a tobacco product. So we need somebody to regulate this entire production process of a tobacco product. That's where, like FDA, for example, in the US, you need, if you want to sell a tobacco product, you need to submit all your data, all your scientific research to the FDA to be able to sell that product in the US. We don't have that landscape in India at the moment. So the most important thing right now for us to have a regulating body who regulates the manufacturing of tobacco. What's being put, what should not be put, what are the limits on tobacco products. This is the start. If we start doing this, I think we'll come to a point where any tobacco manufacturer in India will be able to provide a risk reduced alternative. So this is the most important thing right now for us in India. Any licensing is also very important. We don't have any licensing in India, for example. You can just get a GST number, you can register with excise, and you can start manufacturing tobacco products. That's not how it is done in the US or in Europe or in any place. In Sweden, for example, you cannot do that. So there's a whole approval process, the product approval process that a company has to go through to be able to market that product. So I think that's the one thing that we lack in India, and if we take control of that, I think we can offer products which are risk reduced, of course, and which are controlled.
If such a standard was put into place, and let's look at the Indian landscape, and then see if it's possible to do something like this. So most of these players, or most of these manufacturers, are small time players, right? They are cottage industries, and will they be able to comply? I mean, laws are good if they can be implemented, right? If they are good for the region for which they govern. So, do you think they will have? Is it possible for them to comply with these standards? Now, this as a uh, person from the industry, you would know better. I mean, so if manufacturing standards were put in place, in short, do you think it could be effective, could be implemented such that these small players could then abide by these standards? And what kind of monitoring mechanism would be needed? Do you think it's feasible practically to do something like this in a country like India?
We have to look at the larger picture. The larger picture is to be able to offer safer smokeless tobacco products. Not everybody is going to be able. Not everybody is going to be willing to, or are will be able to comply with the standards. So it has to be forced. You cannot say the smaller guys won't be able to comply with it, so we cannot implement it. We have to look at the larger picture. We have to look at the 300 million tobacco users that we have in our country. So I think it's not going to be possible for everybody to comply of to the manufacturing standards, to the technology. Not everybody has access to the technology as well. So only the guys who can manufacture to the standards are going to remain in the market, which is also good because the consumers can get the right quality of products. They cannot, right now, the Indian market is as such. cheaper, जो सबसे सस्ता है वो बिकता है. That's how, because of the, we have about 200% taxation on tobacco products. It's not, the taxation ideally should be compared to the, based on the risk profile of the tobacco products. So I don't think everybody will be able to comply to this manufacturing standards. But if they want to be in the market, if they want to be able to still manufacture it, they will have no choice but to comply with the manufacturing standards. I think that's when the whole revolution of quality tobacco products will come in India.
How do you see the safer smokeless tobacco market in India panning out in the immediate future? Let's say in a year, year out from now or 2 years out from now. What kind of changes do you expect to see, or some things that are already happening and will become bigger?
I think the smokeless tobacco market in India is the most complex market on this planet, to be honest, because we work in the US, we work in Europe, and the Indian tobacco market is very weird. What is happening right now is that people are moving towards oral pouches. People are, they don't want to put tobacco on their palm, rub it, and put it under their lip. So that certain change is coming into the market, which means that a product like snus can be easily adapted in the Indian market. With with regards to chewing, there's no alternative yet, but we think an alternative would come out in the next 1 or 2 years, and that would work best for the chewing segment as well. And I think the tax burden is as such. The purchasing power is low in our country, and that's one of the reasons why safer alternatives are being killed in the entire industry, in the entire country. I think taxation needs to go down a bit. It needs to be risk relative taxation. Once that is put into place, I think we could be a global example of harm reduction for the entire world. That's what I think. But so far adaptation, a lot of people are moving towards snooze, which is a very good thing. That's what we see.
Any final thoughts on what you would have to say to the policymakers, to the scientific community, and tobacco users before we wind up?
Well, what I would suggest the policymakers is to look at it from a harm reduction angle. And start research, get data, and put regulation behind tobacco products in India. Because I think that's, we don't have any research, we don't have any data, we don't have infrastructure to test tobacco products in India. So it's very important to set up labs to test tobacco in India. For tobacco users, I would say opt for what works for you. Always opt for risk reduce. There are a lot of risk reduce alternatives available in the market right now. Go out, do your own research, and then opt for it. That's my honest suggestion and opinion, because you cannot enforce anybody to switch or opt for a risk reduced profile, but once they have their own awareness, they have done their own research, it becomes much more simple for them and easier for them to adapt to that particular product.